I see scientists are in looking at the idea of what is consciousness, and they're constantly going on about what is consciousness? What is it? Is it deep in my head there? There it is. The thing is, before you ask that, you have to ask not what is consciousness, but what is it that is conscious, right? And before you even ask that, you have to ask, what is it that is it? What do we even mean by the sense of a thing? Of a thing. And just for example, if you look at a river, naively you might say, well, the river's the thing there. You've got the river and you've got the land, right? They're two separate things. But actually, if you look really closely, you will find that as the river, as it gets closer towards the land, there's more silt, a higher concentration of silt. And then right up as it's brushing against the bank, very high concentration of silt. Likewise, you will find with the land that it's completely dry, but as you get closer to the river, it gets more and more muddy and boggy until it becomes something in between the two, where the river is. And in fact, there isn't really a river and land. There's a rand, or a liver. There's a thing that's both, and it can't be one without the other. In fact, in some ways, how can a river run if it does not run on land? How can land mean anything if it isn't in conjunction with that which is there when there isn't any land, which is water? So these are just labels. So when I say I am conscious, what am I really saying? What or who is conscious? Then we'll look at consciousness, which again is a made-up noun, but we will look at it. But it's made up, isn't it? It's an abstract noun. Abstract nouns don't actually exist, right? I mean, politeness doesn't actually exist. You're going to find it. You can cut open every waiter in the country. You will not find politeness inside them. Politeness is an abstract noun that, just like the silt in the river, appears to be there, but in fact it's a bit of the river that's halfway to becoming land, and it's a bit of land that's halfway to becoming river, and then we call it silt. But it isn't really anything. It's a way of looking at the stuff that was already there all along. Politeness is just what was there already all along, as the waiter went about his business. The kind of silt, and it's fictitious. You're just describing the interaction of him in his tuxedo with his nice words, with you sitting down eating your meal, and you call that politeness. It isn't an actual stuff. It isn't actually half him in his tuxedo and half you in your sitting down eating, any more than silt is half river and half land. Neither of those things is true. Silt is not half river and half land, and politeness is not half waiter and half eater. Silt simply is. It simply is. It is simply rand or liver. And every part of the river is also rand or liver, and every part of the land is also rand or liver. And just as every part of the sky in relation to the land, just in the same way, is part of the land. I mean, if there were no sky, the land would just keep going up, and it wouldn't be land. You wouldn't be able to stand on it. But if there were no land, there wouldn't be any sky to fall down through to stand on the land. You wouldn't be able to fall, so it wouldn't be sky. It wouldn't be having up. So what is it, this thing that is conscious? Just to get back to where we were, because I'm rambling. Mind you, the purpose of this is to ramble. But nevertheless, it's not, no, they're not the purpose, beg your pardon. But I just do, I will ramble, that's how it will work. what is it that is conscious? But you see, you made the mistake when you said, what is it that is conscious? Why should it be an it? Where have you got that idea from, that it's an it that's conscious? I had a friend say to me once that consciousness is just a massive illusion that your brain gives you. That your brain and mixtures of chemicals and stuff gives you an illusion. And I said, gives who an illusion? Gives who an illusion? Who gives what an illusion? How can the brain give something an illusion? Unless the brain is like a radio set, and it's not really you at all. And you are, perhaps, as the original theists believe, you are a spiritual creature, and your brain does indeed give you an illusion of the world, and it is indeed a radio set with which you communicate with the physical world. Your body and your brain are nothing more or less than interfaces, screens, if you like, on which you view the physical world. And you are this spiritual being underneath, and that's how we got the whole idea of spirit or soul, is that there has to be someone beneath all of this who is being fooled, who is experiencing the illusions and tricks of the brain. Otherwise, if the brain is just the illusions and the tricks, who is it doing them on? So we can look at it another way. We can say that the brain is a perfectly matched interface with reality. We can say that the brain almost grows out of the structure of this space-time universe itself. That the brain is an integrated weed or ivy that wraps itself around the house of the universe and all its laws and its ways. That ivy wraps itself around it, and so it gives it a shape, and you could knock the whole house down and the ivy would still be there, sitting in its shape to give us looking like a house. What are we doing when we're being the ivy, or when we're using the ivy, when we're using the brain to have a look at the universe? What even are we looking at when I say we're looking at the universe? Well, we don't look at the whole universe. We look only at that bit of the universe of which we are a part. That's to say, just as a let's say a blind slug. A blind slug only knows that to which it is attached and is in some way a part of. It's the same with us, just that the attachments don't look as obvious and as tight as they do with the blind slug, who has to touch everything that he knows, and to know it is to touch it, is to be the same shape as it, is to move across it without moving, because as we move across the world, we move the world across us. We stand still and we move the world across us. We do, don't we? When I walk from here into London, which is 20 miles, I don't feel like I'm 20 miles away at the end of that walk. I feel like I'm still right here. So when we walk, we paddle the earth. In a sense, we stand on a giant ball and we paddle it beneath our feet till it rotates around to show us the spot we want to see. In what sense do we feel like we've travelled in that case? How is it that we feel like we've moved around? Or do we feel like we've moved around, or is that just an illusion that comes from looking at maps afterwards and then thinking it from outside of ourselves? Or is that a spatial jump? And is that part of the interdimensionality of the brain and the way that it can perceive us? Just as we can watch a dancer go through a whole series of dance moves, and if we watch it enough times, we will find that we are able to do it far better, if at all, than we could have done it before. So we would need to be very careful about not getting too caught up on what we imagine to be the case. We mustn't jump to conclusions. We mustn't assume. We've got to remember that there are certain narrative jumps that we make, leaps of faith, if you like, that are just that. And one of them is this idea that I travelled all this distance to get to you. You do not travel any distance. You're stuck in this body the whole time. The only thing that travels is the earth beneath your feet as you paddle them along. And that's just one example of how we have a phony narrative that we overlay on top of our experience, and we do actually successfully integrate it in the end using our imagination, because then we imagine the world as a fixed thing on which we moved, but we don't experience it that way. We see other people move about it that way, and that helps us to imagine ourselves moving about it that way, but we do not experience it that way. We never ever walk to the other side of the room and then look back and say, oh, I thought I was over there. And I've gone. Where am I? Oh, I'm over here. We never ever say that. We are always where we are. That's just one example. This does bring us back to consciousness a little bit, because one of the features of consciousness is that it is unbroken. And I believe it is unbroken for the entire duration of your life, not just while you're awake. You can wake up in the middle of the night and you can look at the clock, and I have one like that there, sort of that kind of clock, you know, you look up at it. I will look at my clock and I'll just know what the time is. I'll think it's 3:03, and I'll look at the clock, and there it will be, 3:03. And I woke up, I hadn't even opened my eyes, so that there is a clock ticking along in your brain very, very accurately. Because those times when you guess it correctly, you usually know you're going to guess it correctly, don't you? You kind of know you're going to get it right. Consciousness. I don't even know what consciousness is. I don't even know what that word is supposed to mean. There's a lot of proving to be done before even asking those questions. There's a lot more that has to be demonstrated to exist at all. You got to show me, first of all, that there is even something you can call consciousness before asking what it is. I am conscious. What does that mean? It means I observe. It means that as I look out at the world, and let's just use sight as the simplest example, I'm looking into a light here, right in front of my eyes. There's a light shining in my eyes so that you can see me. As I look at this light, I am the light in my eyes. The light lives with me, through me, out of me, from me, as if I project the light out into the space. When I see the light gathered into my eyes, I feel as if the light is outside of my eyes, where it originally came from. The process that happened is that the light was gathered into my eye, which is a spherical shape, just as this entire space around me could be defined as a spherical shape. We can define any point in my visual field as a point on the surface of a sphere looking out. And that is why they project this whole world, this whole universe around me projects inside my eye perfectly, because it is also a spherical shape. And as I turn my head and look around, there's no distortion. Everything stays exactly as it should. Not true with a camera, which has a flat plate on the back, and you will see everything distorting as the camera turns like that. It doesn't distort with your eye, and that's because it's projected onto the inside of a sphere. All that information is then taken to the brain, and it's all basically put back again into the original form. So it's reassembled inside your brain, inside a virtual sphere, which is this sphere surrounding me. So it doesn't matter that it was projected upside down or back to front or inside out in your eye, because it doesn't matter, because all the coordinates are kind of in the right places in relation to each other. And your brain doesn't actually know what way up your eye is anyway, does it? Because your brain doesn't exist physically in the space like your body does. So your brain doesn't actually give a damn. Your brain will just decode it the way that makes the most sense. So it takes this spheric sphere of information and it projects it virtually into an imaginary sphere, which another part of your brain then apprehends and sees, and realizes quite soon that, for example, if I turn my eye over there, I see the clock. Okay? And then when I walk over there and I put out my hand, I can grab the clock. So it works out pretty soon that that is the left, and that is the right, and that is up and that is down. And it doesn't care where your eye is or what your eye is. All it knows is that that lot of muscles is the up and that lot of muscles is the down, and it's purely a pragmatic decoding, a functional pragmatic decoding, which has to work. It would not but work. So when I'm looking at this world, we have to say that I am looking at a virtual representation of the world. And even if that sounds a little bit uncomfortable, I can show you that it absolutely is the case and must be true. And you must see it that way. And for this simple reason, if we take, say, a fly or a wasp or a bird, and we look through their eyes at the world, it would look completely different. A spider that has many eyes and looks around, it won't look the same. A bat that looks around using sound won't see the same world that you and I see. It may even see the density of the air, the dustiness of the air, the bat, perhaps, the muffledness of the sound as it comes back. And we would see something slightly different. Something related, but different, but not necessarily, not in all cases. Birds can see parts of the ultraviolet spectrum that we can't see. They can see colours we can't see. So what is apparent as I look around this room is not what is out there, it's what my brain has selected as the most useful things for this particular organism to be able to see. And if they were not useful, they will have atrophied and fallen away as being not that particularly useful. The colour blue clearly wasn't that useful. The colour red was much more useful, so it's bloody bright. We know that the colour red's useful. Blood is red, and dangerous fruits and flowers and things are red to eat. Red is a very useful colour to know. It tells us when the sun is about to set and so on. And there's a lot of use to the colour red that the colour blue does not really enjoy. So we've become particularly sensitive to the red. Now, when I'm seeing that light there, or when I'm seeing the red dot on my camera there to say it's recording, and I see that one is white and one is red, the red has a lushness about it. And that is the part that science fails to explain time and time again. That is the spiritual aspect. That's the part that makes us think, well, okay, everything's been decoded by the brain. It's all pragmatically correct. Reds stand out more. They're going to be more energetic, they're going to have a greater frequency, a more, in fact, they have a lower frequency, but they're going to have a more potent frequency to us. These frequencies that should actually have a lower, they should actually have a lower effect because they're lower vibrations, but they have a higher effect because they're more important. What is the sense of that brightness, of that vividness of that red light? What is that? What am I experiencing there? And who is experiencing that? Who is getting this? Who or what is getting this colour? This thing that appears to be quite independent of the object, of the intensity of the light, but it's the colour. It's the colour of the light. So this is a great mystery. This is a great mystery, and to me, when I focus on colours and look at colours, it's a very great spiritual, mysterious experience for that very reason. I'm not going to attempt to explain it, and I don't believe I ever will be able to, and I don't believe anyone will ever be able to. Because I believe that the response of looking at a colour, the response we have with it, or of hearing a beautiful chord progression in music, or of feeling, tasting something delicious, or feeling a lovely sensual experience, these, even feeling a warm fire heating you up, those experiences are programmed. The response we have to those experiences are programmed into us, and we know that. And maybe programming in the positive, so as to say warmth might have a positive program and cold might have a negative program for us, so we go towards warmth. The positive programming may be all that it is. Be all that it is. But then why does warmth feel different than colour looks? And why does a chord sound different than chocolate cake tastes? You will never know, and I will never know. And these are not matters for science. These are ravelled forever by the mysteries of the universe, and will never be unravelled by those who are not much more than little tiny manifestations of those mysteries.